everyone. If you haven't heard, Apex is apparently a dead game, which means finding competent teammates has never been harder. Today we're going to take a look at the best legends for you to drop with if you are looking to take on Apex Legends as both a solo player with no teammates or someone just trying to clutch up a 1v3 for your random teammates. Let's get right to it. As always around here, D tier is the bad, underwhelming, and poor legends. The worst solo legend for me is going to be Lifeline at a D+ tier, as Lifeline's main role is supporting and getting the squad back up, and if there is no squad, then what's the point? She still has her care package for herself, which is fine, and she does get extra heals with the drone, but not being able to use her premier ability of the revive seems a little weak. If you are queuing solo fill and playing with randoms, then Lifeline is more like an A tier legend in my opinion, as you never know what your randoms are going to give you, and being able to revive and support them is actually pretty nice when it comes to playing with people who you aren't familiar with. At a C tier, we have the okay, fine, or nothing special legends, and Wattson gives us the first pick, as Wattson, while she is a decent legend if played properly, really does not fit the meta of Apex Legends, and this is especially the case in a solo environment. Holding up areas and locking it down really excels when an entire team can control and monitor their area, and since Wattson is solo in our environment, the amount of space that she can create will be a little bit more limited. Her offensive power isn't really there as well, as I think really the only thing going for her in a solo environment is her ultimate pylon. If solo queuing but filling with a squad, I do give her a B+ rating, as she does have a nice mix of defensive and supportive capabilities that are better yet realized with some teammates. Crypto slightly edges out Wattson for me at C+, or the borderline B tier of good. Crypto excels when he's able to dish out information to the squad via his drone and make those clutch saves through picking up the banners or remote revives with his drone. Crypto's saving grace is that he can use the drone to somewhat act like a decoy in fights, which can be good for both getting intel as to enemies' whereabouts and also distracting those enemies, even if it is so briefly. Crypto is a fine solo legend, but there's a ton of better options, and it's pretty clear that his atypical playstyle can excel a little bit more with a team. I give him the same C+ rating whether he is a solo no filling or if he is playing with randoms. For B tier, we start to move into the legends who have some viability when it comes to their killing and 1v3ing potential, but still are not quite at the top of the game. We do begin with Mad Maggie, who can have some decent moments, mainly due to her kit of abilities, which is fairly good for fighting many enemies at once. The tactical drill can be decent at separating players and creating some opportunities, and it's a similar situation with her ultimate wrecking ball, which not only comes back pretty fast, it's great at separating enemies and making more individual one-on-one fights, or to get a quick knock to even the odds. When it does come to Mad Maggie's solo queue but fill potential, she's not really too great, seeing as she does very little for the team in terms of usefulness for both support or even coordinating attacks beyond anything that is super linear. I give her the C tier rating for this. Second to Mad Maggie is Revenant, who in my seasonal tier list has always been given the bottom spot, but when it does come to solo play versus squads, he has one huge thing going for him, and it's going to be his flanking capabilities with his passive higher climbing. It does require very specific positioning, and a player who can take advantage of this by dipping in and out of battle, getting a quick knock, and then quickly using the climbing to get to areas where players can follow, it can be pretty powerful. The Silence Tactical can also be great to catch some enemies off guard and create separation as well. His ultimate is pretty poor without certain legends to back it up though, which is the biggest thing holding him back. When it does come to random fill lobbies, I do give Revenant the D+ tier rating, as I think he lacks a lot of team usefulness, and even more so when you are playing with randoms. Next up is Gibraltar, also at B tier, and while I do think Gibraltar is one of the best legends in the game for all-around play, I do think he struggles somewhat when you are purely going in as a solo player. Gibraltar excels when he can use his tactical dome and ultimate to support the team or make coordinated attacks, and without this, he kind of falls a little flat. That being said, he's still super spongy and he can soak up a ton of damage with his gun shield in a one-on-one, and he still has the utility to create separation with his dome shield. When solo queuing with other players, Gibby is definitely an upper A tier to an A+ legend, as he has a ton of value in support, offensive, and defensive capabilities. I think Gibraltar is a fine option if you want a little bit more of a tactical playstyle in your solo queue, but there's still going to be many better options. The final straight B tier for solo play is going to be Newcastle. Much like many legends before him, Newcastle is better off with a team he can support, but still has a lot of good moves for some solo play. Mainly it's the lack of a viable passive with those revives that gets him hurt when you are on your own. Newcastle still has some movement though with his ultimate, and the additional fortification can also be nice to create separation and hold up areas and force enemies to play into your hand. Additionally, the tactical mobile shield is a fine option for playmaking, although I still think it's a little bit better when you do have some teammates in there to help support. For random filling, Newcastle in my opinion is one of the best legends you can play for those pesky random players, and I do give him an S tier rating for this. The first at a borderline amazing for solo play is going to be Catalyst at B+. Catalyst is very similar to Revenant, where she requires specific positioning to excel with, and this mainly revolves around her capabilities to passively block and reinforce doors. This, in conjunction with her tactical traps, also lets her have additional ways to lock down areas and keep enemies away. This type of offensive and defensive mix of power to bait enemies and separate them through these is really where she does shine, and it's very useful in many one-on-many situations. When it comes to her power to solo queue with randoms, I think it's less powerful as it requires really the entire team to play around her kit, and I think her kit is fairly weak if not being coordinated. Because of this, I do give her the C+ rating for solo, but fill squats. Following Catalyst is Season 11's Ashe, and Ashe has not a ton to her kit, but the simplicity makes it very attractive for solo play. Being able to at a whim get around to height or escape enemies is very good, and having the freedom to coordinate a phase breach ultimate without random teammates is pretty solid. Her tactical I think is pretty weak and forgettable, but her passive to find enemies and ping a death box mid-fight definitely has a lot of viability to better understand your 1-on-3 fights. I give Ashe the same B+ rating if you are playing with randoms, as there isn't too much that you need to know about her. One of my favorite legends to both play and recommend when rolling with randoms is going to be Loba, but for solo no-fill play, I do give her the upper B+ rating. While I think she is pretty good right now, she does lack some offensive power that many other legends do have when it comes to combat. The black market doesn't do a ton beyond armor swaps or looting remotely, whereas her passive is basically non-existent for fights, and this means she really only has her tactical to help her get around. But when it does come to playing with random players, she absolutely is great, as helping the squad get loot is very underrated, and since no communication is required to do so, this makes it even better. I give her the A+ rating for this. If there was a solo ranked mode, I would probably give this legend one of the top spots, but for general 1v3ing power, I think Caustic is just a decent option at B+. He is very good at fortifying areas and slowing things down, so if you are looking to be more of a passive player in your solo games, then he definitely is an option, but when it comes to clutching up and making big plays, I don't think there is a ton there. The only saving grace though, I think is his gas ultimate, but since the timer is super long, you are not going to be able to use this in every 1v2 or 1v3 you go into. For playing with randoms, it will require a little communication, but I do give him the B+ rating, as I think he is a very good legend at helping the squad get a win, but maybe not quite as much when it does come to overall support and offensive power. The final B+ legend for both solo play and playing with randoms is going to be Bangalore. Bangalore has a fair amount of potential to be a great legend, but since there is a lot of scanning in Apex, this continues to be her main issue. I think a Bangalore without a team though actually has increased potential, as she can freely use her smokes on and around herself with not having to worry about who she is blinding. I do think her passive is also extremely underrated though, and this speed boost can be wild at letting you get away to reset or push in for an aggressive knock to open a fight. Again, I give her the same B+ rating for playing with randoms, as I do think her smokes sometimes hurt more than help, and she doesn't do too much to actually support the team, especially if there's a scanner around. Oddly enough, and as always, if you are ever looking to join up with another player and not play solo and not play with randoms, you gotta hop into my community Discord. You can also chat with myself and the community in there. We'd absolutely love to have you. At A tier, we do have the amazing, incredible, and near meta legends. A historically bad legend for my tier lists is always Mirage, but for solo play, when no one is around to back you up or to support you, I do give Mirage the A tier rating for a handful of reasons. The big one is being that you can create teammates when you don't have any. While the decoys from both his tactical and ultimate aren't per se overpowered, they can be just enough to give the illusion of a multi-enemy fight, which can greatly change how certain battles flow. Don't get me wrong though, it's still going to require a ton of skill to execute this with effectiveness. When it comes to playing with randoms, Mirage pretty much brings nothing to the table beyond invisibly reviving players, and because of this, I give him the D+ rating when you are solo queuing but random filling. Another great legend for solo engagements is going to be Fuse. Fuse for a minute now has been all around a great legend, and when playing solo, I think mainly his tactical clusters are pretty decent at locking enemies down and getting some extra damage in there when you really need it. His ultimate can absolutely be a playmaker as well, to separate enemies in buildings as well as to do a ton of damage very quickly. When it comes to fighting players with random teammates, I do drop him down a little bit to the B rating, as I don't think Fuse brings a lot in terms of team support or viability when you are playing with unfamiliar players. Rampart for me is an all-around solid legend basically in anything that she is thrown into right now, and solo Apex is no exception to this. Her tactical walls not only help boost her outgoing damage, but being able to use the walls to creatively block off areas through either holding a power position or even trapping an enemy in a building is pretty underrated. Rampart does struggle, I think, when it does come to her ultimate and passive abilities, but both of these can be pretty good on their own regards if you are using them appropriately, and if you are using Sheila more as like a third-party tool. I give Rampart the same rating of an A if you are playing with randoms, as I think her kit is pretty natural and useful, and it does not require too much coordination. Our final straight A tier legend is going to be Vantage, who I think excels very nicely due to her mix of recon, aggressive, and movement properties. Being able to see how many players are alive in a squad and their shield rarity means you can make more informed and smarter decisions on who you want to take on, which is definitely underrated and not talked about enough, especially if you're a solo player. Not to mention, having a third weapon with her ultimate sniper means you can't open every single fight off with some big damage. Having the repositional power to move around with her tactical is also insane, and in general, any movement legend is going to do very well in a solo environment. For playing with randoms, I do think she is a slightly weaker choice at B tier, as she doesn't do a ton for these random players, and this is especially true if you are not communicating to the squad. There's a few legends at a borderline meta tier at A+, and the first is Seer. Seer has also been a powerhouse legend for a minute now, and this continues to be the case in a solo environment. I don't give him the S tier rating, mainly because I think he lacks a little bit of power and movement, and if you are looking to dive in head first, you're gonna be lacking these, but being able to track people with his passive and tactically stop a squad reviving their player better lets you win a solo fight without having the enemy squad reset or hold you out. Not to mention, the ultimate is pretty incredible when you are getting pushed by many enemies. I give Seer the same A+ rating when you are playing with randoms, mainly because he has a ton of usefulness, but I do think he isn't S tier worthy just because you can't as easily coordinate an ultimate push, which Seer is really good at when you are playing with a pre-made squad. The second legend is going to be Octane. Octane's kit is already pretty solo centric, so this actually kind of helps his solo chances, but having the extreme speed is definitely useful when trying to finesse around enemies. The ultimate pad can let you get a quick high ground push or getaway, and having the passive health regen means you can be a little bit more present in your fight and not have as much downtime. I do think Octane is pretty linear and easy to counter, but a good Octane still has a ton of usefulness. I think Octane is a decent pickup when you are playing with randoms, and I do give him the B tier rating for this, mostly because his kit is a little bit more self-centric rather than team-oriented. The final A+ solo legend is going to be Pathfinder, my personal main for the past couple of years. Pathfinder honestly excels in combat that not many legends can compete with. His kit was already more self-centric, and being able to grapple and play Apex in a non-linear fashion at any moment is quite good and hard for many players to deal with. You can dip in, get a knock, and quickly grapple or zipline out of really any environment, which makes his combat style very good and satisfying to play with, and very hard for enemies to deal with. When it comes to solo but with randoms, I think he struggles quite a bit, as his kit is pretty archaic, and while the zipline is good, it's kind of all he has. I give him the C+ rating for this type of play. We are now moving on to the meta, the superior and top tier legends in S tier, but if you are enjoying or just want to support the content we do around here, hit the like button and subscribe for more. That is always on the way. Our first meta tier legend for solo play is going to be Valkyrie. Valkyrie did see her huge nerf a few seasons ago, but still, she is way too good to not recommend. She's one of those legends whose entire set of abilities really has very little to no drawbacks. Flying means more control over your fights, and unlike Pathfinder's grapple, this thing basically can be used at any time if you are being smart with your fuel usage. If you are pushing 20 bombs, a redeploy ultimate is also pretty incredible. This ultimate for me gives her the S+ tier rating when you are playing with randoms, which means Valkyrie is never a bad decision when you are playing or looking for a legend to play in a solo-esque environment. In no particular order, the second S tier legend for me is going to be be Wraith. Wraith in a solo fight seems outdated, but in reality, her tactical and portal combo can both be really great to help control a fight and reset at it to have another go. Her passive is pretty much worthless though. If you are playing with random teammates, I think she's a little bit weaker, more like a solid A tier, as there's just simply other legends who can do similar things to what she can do, but are much better off and more team friendly. Not too much more to say on this OG legend that you probably don't already know. Just know that even though her tactical takes 15 years to activate, she's still very good. Starting with the other side of things, the premier legend for playing with random players is going to be Bloodhound at an S+ tier rating. For playing solo though, they are still an incredible S tier pick for me. Bloodhound has way too much team usefulness with basically no skill required, and since their scanning is so wide net, you don't really need any sort of team communication or coordination for the scan just to work and be useful. This is the main reason why Bloodhound is an S+ tier pick when you are playing with randoms. For playing solo though, Bloodhound still has it all for aggressive plays with their ultimate to just making more informed plays through their scans. Bloodhound is a superb pick worthy of your time in any mode, with or without teammates. The premier legend for me when it comes to solo fighting and going in on your own is still going to be Horizon at S+. Not only was she my top rated legend for the season, she rightfully deserves to be considered the premier killing legend, as her movement through the passive and tactical lift really just lets her be more fluid and harder to get down than most of the other legends in Apex. The black hole isn't too bad either when you are looking to separate and make some big plays on enemy teams that might be grouped together. For playing with randoms, I do think Horizon is still one of the best picks at a straight S tier, and really, there is nothing that the Queen of Movement can't do. If you are looking to improve your skills but are struggling, check out this video right here for 6 reasons why you are not improving. Hit the like button, sub for more. I'll see you in the next one.